Romans 8:19. It says like this, that's St. Paul. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. So the creation is waiting eagerly, expecting something, and that expectation of the creation is the sons of God. What that means for us, that the creation is waiting eagerly for the sons of God to be revealed. For me, I stopped a little bit and asked myself what that means, that the trees, the creation, that's including as well human beings, because we are the creation of God. So what that means, that they are waiting, earnestly waiting for the revelation of the children of God. Can we understand that every creature, everything in this universe is waiting for you as a human being to be true human being? That means that sons of God, children of God, they have a certain character. That means we are restoring the first mission that we had from God. And the first mission was simply that we are given that responsibility. And the responsibility simply is not only to dominate, but the responsibility is to be, and to be yourself first of all. To be who you are, the way that God has created you. And that means the first thing that we could reveal that would make sense to the creation, would make the whole creation respect our humanity, is to be true humans. Most of the time, we're trying to forget who we are, and we try to be like societies are framing us. Now we've been molded into molds that the societies, I don't know whom is putting the molds, but human beings has been molded into a shape, and that shape, it looks like not really the humanity that God has created us with. So to bring us back to that creation, the first creation, we need to understand that the first mission that God has given to us is to be like Him. To be like Him. Because if you read in the book of Genesis, in the first, God said, let us create man on our image and likeness. So He wanted a human being that will be given the nature that's according to God, and as well to behave, to act, to think like Him. And to do so, we need to have a dominion. We need to have power. Then here we have the image, the likeness, and the power, the authority. And to restore that first mission, we need to stay on that process, only looking to God. You know, when the source of evil started in human being, so they lost the power, they lost their respect. It started when human beings start to look away from God. It didn't actually start when Adam and Eve took from the tree and ate. But it started when they start to think something different than the vision of God for them. And you could see it's the same way. The tree that God told them not to eat from, as an expression of freedom. The commandment was not a limitation for the freedom of human beings, but the commandment was simply an expression, an opportunity that human beings would express their freedom. How could they express their freedom if there is no choices? It's logical. If you have two choices and you are free to choose, then it has to be two things. And that's why God put that limitation and said, don't eat from that tree, to give you an opportunity to choose Him willingly. But when human beings start to think different, and they start to look away from God, and they start to think, the tree is good. Why God prevented me to eat from that tree that is beneficent for me? Because the serpent told them that once you eat from there, you will be like God. And imagine this foolishness that human being went through, the blindness. What you have, you already search for. You have already the image of God, and you have already the likeness. You have already everything. You are the image of God, and then someone is coming to tell you, if you do this, then you become like God. Imagine this foolishness, the blindness that happened to human being. What you have, you start to search for because of the blindness that will enter into human being because they look away from God. And the first thing that happened, that not only what you search for is already having, but still you start to think, why God prevented me to eat from that tree? If it's good for me, then God must be wrong. Then you start to think that the commandments is putting you in challenge with God Himself, who put the commandments, that He must be wrong, that because this is good for me. And then your mind starts to change because the trust is changing. When you lose trust with God, you start to change your mindset. Then what you will see, then you will find yourself telling about things that is not good for you, but still you believe in it. You start to see the words in a different concept. Simply the same tree was there, and every day they were passing by, they never had the desire for it. They never had a desire to look at it. They never had a desire to eat from it. But after they heard that, then something is changing. We make the changes that is coming inside your heart simply because you start to look away from God. And that's why the whole creation lost respect to human being, because they lost contact with God. And the whole creation is still waiting for us to restore our relationship, to have the same honor and to have the same honor and respect for God and for the image of God, human beings. And that's why it ended up that human being dared to trespass the commandment of God, dared to make a choice against God's will. And now, what about us today? They did it years back. I don't know how many years, but now we do the same. We hear the word of God, and then we start to criticize it. Is it good for me or not? We want our Christianity to be like the Christianity that will be given to you in a menu. You select what you wanted, and what you don't want, you leave. It's not like that. God is the God of love, and God is the God of whole. The whole human being has to be there. And that means that when you come and choose God, you choose God with all your heart, all of you, not part of you, not something that you will choose and something that you will neglect. It's something that it's a whole human being. And that means the moment you choose God with all your being, with all of you, the moment that you restore that image. And that's why, because we could not comprehend that omnipotent God, the Spirit, Jesus gave us the example. God himself was incarnate, became human being like us, so we could touch him. We could have an example. And that example is giving us how to behave as human being. And that means that to restore the image of God in you, you have to imitate Christ. And to imitate Christ, you need to have the mind of Christ. What is the mind of Christ? He emptied himself. He became human being. So God lifted him up and gave him a name above all names. So every tongue will confess that Jesus is the Lord for the glory of God. That means that when you humble yourself, he is lifting you up. And that's the mind of Christ. The mind of Christ is the constant love. It's the unconditioning love. It's a love that will surpass all knowledge. Then you will be filled with the fullness of God. And that means you become human being. Human being is a perfect example of the image of Christ in our lives. So where are we now from that image? We only wanted to imitate the Word, not to imitate Christ. Because the image of Christ is so far away from us. Because simply it's challenging us because we want to obey according to our will. We don't want to listen to that great opportunity of expressing our freedom by following the commandment because we understand it. You remember when the people of Israel was traveling from Egypt, it was a great moment in their lives. Great miracles. The 10 plagues against the Egyptians, they saw it, how God is wonderful. He fed them in the wilderness, gave them the water from the rock, sheltered them every day, protecting them from scorpions and serpents. Everything is given, and even more in a great visual, tangible way. His glory was overshadowing them. And you remember, according to the Bible, what the people of Israel chose? I want you to imagine this scene. They were 600,000 persons. Imagine this, 600,000 persons. And they were eating from the manna. And then a group of them, I think, maybe imagine 5,000 of them were coming surrounding Moses, angry men. What do you want? We want to eat meat. We are sick and tired of that food, of that dry food. We want to eat meat. God is giving you that food. But your desire, I want to eat from the tree. It's good for me. And that means this angry desire that's in you will give you something that's out of reason. It's never rational. Sometimes we don't understand that the blindness that happened in our hearts is irrational. You're asking for something that it would never happen. Sometimes you want to eat meat in the desert, in the wilderness, 600,000 person, and imagine you're asking for that. It's irrational. Sometimes we do the same. We're asking from God irrational thinking because we look away from him. It's blindness. And that means that we need to learn the lesson. And the lesson was very simple. God told Moses, I will give them meat to eat. And he sent them the birds, the quail. They ate and they disturbed the nature. But the serpents start to attack them. You reap. You get what you sow. You reap that. And you're calling for it for yourself. You're asking for it. Your choices made that. Then there was death in every tent there. And the solution was a great lesson for all of us. I want to confess to you, when I was young, I thought, when I was reading these passages, I thought that God will make another miracle and he will kill all the snakes. It's very simple for God to kill all the snakes. It's very simple for God to stop all this temptation. It's very simple for him to stop all this. But this is not what he wanted. He wants you to choose him willingly with your love. Use your freedom to choose him. And that's why God asked Moses, put a copper serpent, put it up, and every person will change his mind and look to the copper serpent, will be healed. So the healing actually for all of us to restore the image is to come back and look at him, only him. And that's why in the New Testament, when Jesus met with Nicodemus, Nicodemus was a very knowledgeable person. He was a teacher of Israel. And Jesus started to talk with him on the level of a teacher. He talked to him about the love of God. And he started to tell him about the transformation of humanity and the rebirth that makes humanity comes back to their own nature. And he did not understand. He told him, how could I, as an old person, will go into my mother's womb and go back and reborn? It's very hard when we are able only to look at life through a tangible way, measurable things, only what we can touch and what we can comprehend. There is a beyond. Our humanity is much more than what we see and touch. And that's why, to restore our humanity, we need to see the inner person that was created on the image of God, the spirit that was given to us, the unity of our humanity with the divinity. Then we understand our humanity. Jesus told him, as Moses lifted up the copper serpent in the wilderness, so that's every person, so the Son of Man will be lifted up on the wood, so every person who believes in him will have eternal life. And that's why we need to look back. He is there every day waiting for you. And it's not only him, that the whole creation around you is eagerly waiting for you to restore your humanity. For the revelation of the sons, for the children of God to be revealed, you will find that the whole creation will have reverence for you because you're the image of God. Then this is the perfection of humanity. And that means we have a responsibility not only for the outside, we have a responsibility for ourselves, first of all, to restore that reverence, that image of God that has been given to us. Now, my very little message for you. If St. Paul is telling us that the creation is eagerly waiting for the children of God to be revealed. What about us now? It's a call for every person of you. Come back, look at him, you believe in him, he will fill you with his love and peace and reverence. Then you will restore your humanity. Then joy will overshadow you, and no one can take away from you. May the Lord bless you, and glory be to God.